Assalamualaikum to all panels and lecturers. Our group will be presenting application of the analytical hierarchy process to analyze the factor and location of a small restaurant under supervision of Madam Siti Binti Januri. Let me introduce our group members.
My name is Amira Binti Asri and I am the first and last presenter.
My name is Nursyamimi Mahzan and I am the second presenter.
My name is Nurul Atikah binti Amran and I am the third presenter.
Now we will start with chapter 1 that we will begin with background of study. Malaysia is known as the home for people from different types of ethnic and religious. As a result, the people are more familiar with a wide variety of foods from different backgrounds. People are more likely to eat out or order a meal to be delivered to their homes as their lifestyles and technology has been evolving, such as ordering food online. This called for work opportunities in the foods industry that was grabbed by many. As the number of restaurants has grown, the industry has become more competitive. Small restaurant is one that sells food at a lower price than larger establishments that sell foods on a higher price. According to SME Corporate, small restaurant is included under service sector. English in 1996 state that 67% of new business entrants fail within the first 4 years should be disturbing to any small business owner or restaurant considering entering the industry. This emphasizes the importance of providing accurate knowledge about the reasons for similar performance and failure company enterprises. While in 2016, Hanaisha wrote that one of the important characteristics of brand success is a strategic location that is visible and located in an area with a massive population. Next, we will discuss about problem statement. People are inspired to start their own business for a variety of reasons. Unfortunately, not every business can be successful, especially for small restaurant business. They lack plans for sustaining their businesses that is stated by Nizam in 2017. Therefore, there are a lot of challenges that every small restaurant business needs to overcome and get through, especially those who are new in starting their own business. An establishment's location is a strategic decision that essentially anchors it to a point in a space. Most popular restaurants are easy to locate and customers can find them in urban areas or special places everywhere around the world. Any errors related to business may be fixed later, but a poor location is often irreversible. Some of the restaurants are not visible and hidden from the public eye. For instance, a restaurant that is located in a remote location away from people or a restaurant in a residential area, both of which are places where people normally cook at home. Therefore, location is so important in order to have a successful and a sustainable business. Next, there are 3 research objectives and 3 research questions of this study. The first research objective is to compare the value of consistency ratio and geometric consistency index of each decision maker. Next, to determine the best factor affecting each location of a small restaurant by each decision maker. And lastly, to rank the location of a small restaurant by each decision maker. While the first research question is, what is the difference in the value of consistency ratio and geometric consistency index of each decision maker? Second, what is the best factor affecting each location of a small restaurant by each decision maker? And the third is, what is the rank of the location of a small restaurant by each decision maker? For the scope and limitation, this study mainly focused on analyzing the location of a small restaurant in Johor and Negeri Sembilan of Malaysia in terms of 5 factors, which are location characteristics, demography, cost, physical features, and competition. Due to lack of manpower to conduct the study, only 3 decision makers, each from 3 different areas, which is industrial, residential, and commercial area, were included in the study to ensure that the findings are accurate and relevant for to adapt in other areas of Malaysia. Another limitation of this study, the factors selected to be used in AHP is based on the citations of other studies. For the significance of the study, the findings of this study will benefit the owner of the business relating to food service in finding the best factor for each location for their business, especially small restaurants, considering that the food service industry is very competitive in Malaysia. Next, this study will also give a clear sense of direction for them to know the role of locations in giving success for their restaurant. The most significant factors are choosing in the location of business, the higher the possibilities of success in the restaurant in that chosen area. Thus, this study helps them to uncover the best factors according to each location and the best location for a small restaurant based on the preference of the decision makers.
The next chapter is the methodology. Firstly, we'll be discussing the research design. There are 4 phases in research design. The first phase is the introductions. In this phase, the research objective, research questions, problem statement were identified. LR and also the locations and the factor were analyzed and determined. The next phase is the data collections. In this phase, the decision makers were selected based on specific criteria and the survey were distributed. And the data collected will be analyzed by using AHP method. The third phase will be AHP. In this phase, the pairwise comparison method were identified and the priority vector were calculated, and the consistency will be calculated by using consistency ratio and also geometric consistency index. The last phase will be the conclusion. In this phase, the result from the AHP will be analyzed and concluded. Next is the research population and sample. Since we are using AHP, according to Waris 2019, a larger sample size in AHP usually associates with the higher degree of inconsistency. Thus, in this study, we are selecting 3 decision makers which from 3 different places, which are industrial, residential, and commercials. Besides that, the decision makers must fulfill the definition of SME, and the decision makers' business must be at least operated for a minimum of 5 years. Because according to Abdullah, Ahmad, Zainuddin, and Rus in 2016, a small company is predicted to be a failure in as early as 4 years and above. Besides that, the decision makers must be at least 18 years and above because that is the legal age for a Malaysian to register their business. Next is the data collection process. A judgmental sampling method is used as the researcher want the decision makers to fulfill the judgment of the researcher based on the specific criterion as mentioned before. Besides that, the decision makers is among the Malaysians that are living in Johor Bahru and Negeri Sembilan. Besides that, the 3 decision makers selected is based on their restaurant located in 3 different areas, which are for the decision maker 1, the restaurant is located in the industrial area. For decision maker 2, the restaurant is located in the residential area, and for decision maker 3, the restaurant is located in the commercial area. For this study, we are using primary data, and the data collected using phone interviews, and at the same time, the surveys are distributed to decision makers. For research instrument, the survey for expert judgment for this study is adapted by Su and Lin in 2013. In this study, 25 pairwise comparison metrics were built by using this formula, which is the M is the number of alternatives and N is the number of factors. Lastly, the data analysis. There are 5 factors that the study will be going to analyze using AHP method. The 5 factors were determined by looking at the literature reviews. As seen in this table, there are 5 factors and the explanation for each factors and the sources for each factors. The first factors is the location characteristics, and the second factors is the demographic, and the third factors is the physical feature, and the fourth factors is the cost, and the last factors are the competition. Lastly, the analytical hierarchy process, also known as AHP. As you can see, this is the flowchart of the AHP process. From the top, the first step is to establish the hierarchy structure by identifying the goals, factors, and also alternative. As you can see, this is the hierarchy structure to determine the best factor affecting each location of a small restaurant by each decision makers. Next is the hierarchy structure to rank the best location according by each decision maker. Next is to compose a pairwise comparison matrix. Besides using SAARTI scale 1 to 9, this study uses scales of 1 to 5 adapted by Alphabet and Nest 1993 to solve the shortcomings problem arise by using SAARTI scales 1 to 9. Then, the metrics are then normalized, and from the normalized metric, the priority vector are calculated. Before finding the best alternative, consistency checking must be conducted by calculating the consistency ratio. Then the steps are repeated from step 2 until step 5. Find the consistency ratio for each of the factor. If the consistency ratio is more than 0.1, thus the survey paper is needed to be revised and altered. But if the consistency ratio is less than 0.1, thus we can continue calculate for the best alternative. Then the step is continue to the next steps, which is to compose a pairwise comparison matrix between factors and then calculate the priority vector. Then we calculate the overall priority vector to find the weightage and the rank. Lastly, the geometric consistency index is another method to calculate the consistency of the data.
Next, I will explain about descriptive analysis. There are 3 decision makers involved in this study, which come from 3 different locations, which is industrial, residential, and commercial. All the decision makers who were involved in this study are all female and no male decision makers involved. 4.1 shows the percentage of decision makers by age group. Age group between 36 to 45 years old, 46 to 55 years old, and more than 56 years old have the same percentage values, which is 33.3%. This shows that all the decision makers are over 18 years old. Hence, the decision makers pass the legal minimum age to own a registered business. Next, figure 4.2 indicates the percentage of years of restaurant operating. 66.7% of the decision makers have more than 15 years of experience or restaurant operating. The other 33.3 decision makers have between 5 to 10 years restaurant operating. Figure 4.3 shows the monthly sales for each decision makers. The majority of the decision makers, which is 66.7%, have monthly sales between 10,000 to 15,000 ringgit per month. The other 33.3% of the decision makers receive more than 20,000 ringgit for monthly sales. Table 4.2 shows the percentage of full-time employees. Based on Table 4.2, it is shown that all 3 decision makers have 5 to 10 full-time employees employed at their restaurant. The AHP analysis. Based on Table 4.3, location characteristic, demography, cost, physical features, and competition is the factors that influence the decision in choosing location for opening a small restaurant. While Table 4.4 shows the name for alternative, which is L1 for industrial area, L2 for residential area, and L3 for commercial area. Consistency comparison. Decision maker 1 have 4 CR values that lie below threshold 0.1, which are 0.0213, 0, and 0.075, which highlight in green color. For GCI value, which highlight in yellow color, decision maker 1 has 4 GCI value that are less than the threshold value 0.31, which are 0.0736, 0, and 0.2555. Thus, there are more than half values of CR and GCI of decision maker 1 that are less than threshold value of CR and GCI. Decision maker 2 has 5 CR values highlight in green color that are less than threshold 0.1, which are 0.0899, 0, 0.075, 0.0639, and 0.0464. In comparison, highlighted in yellow color, the GCI values for decision maker 2 that lies below the threshold of 0.31 are 0, 0.2555, 0.2192, and 0.1602. For decision maker 3, it shows that the CR that lies below threshold 0.1 are 0.0639, 0, and 0.0747, which highlight in green color. Besides, the value for GCI of decision maker 3 has 4 values that lies below threshold 0.31, which are 0.2192, 0, and 0.2555, which highlight in yellow. Therefore, data collected by decision maker 3 can also be used for calculation in the AHP process. This table shows the summary of consistency comparison between CR and GCI. It contains the difference of when to use CR and GCI, the formula, and the threshold values for CR and GCI. Both CR and GCI carry the same meaning, which is to measure the consistency of judgment by decision makers. Best factor according to each decision maker. For decision maker 1, which is located in industrial area, the best factor is F1, 43.63%, followed by F2, 21.25%, F4, 16.81%, F3, 12.32%, and list F5 with 6%. According to decision maker 2, the best factor is F3, which is 32.62%, F2, 21.02%, F5, 17.48%, F1, 17.3%, and the least important F4, 11.59%. Decision maker 3 state that F2 is the best factor with 50.65%, followed by F1, 24.66%, F3, 18.4%, F4, 11.51%, and F5, 4.78%. The ranking comparison for each decision makers is made by evaluating the highest overall priority vector for each location based on decision makers. Based on the overall priority vector for decision maker 1, L3 has the highest overall priority vector by 0.6363, followed by L1, 0.2336, and L2, 0.1301. The ranking for overall priority vector for decision maker 2 has L2 as the highest by 0.4612, followed by L1, 0.3818, and lastly L3, 0.1569. For decision maker 3 shows that L3 has the highest rank with 0.4891, followed by L2, 0.3711, and the last rank is L3, 0.1498. To conclude, this is the summary of result and analysis.
Lastly, we will discuss about Chapter 5, Conclusion and Future Recommendation. For the first objective, which is comparing the value of CR and GCI for each location and factor of decision making, GCI's values are virtually comparable to CR values because when CR values are regarded consistent, GCI values are likewise considered consistent. Next, for the second objective, which is to determine the best factor affecting each location of a small restaurant by each decision maker. In industrial areas, location characteristics are the most important concern in having a small restaurant, while cost is the most important factor in residential areas and factor demography must be considered in commercial areas. Lastly, the third objective, which is to rank the location of a small restaurant by each decision maker. Decision maker 1 from industrial area and decision maker 3 from commercial area rank commercial areas as number 1 and the best location to open a small restaurant, while decision maker 2 from residential area rank its own area as the best location to open a small restaurant. In a nutshell, all objectives are achieved. For further recommendation, the following recommendations were proposed. Firstly, more methodological work such as literature review is needed to capture the impact and result of general participation in research. Then, even though it is methodologically difficult, conduct some long-term studies that aim at quantifying the impact of public involvement on key indicators such as recruitment and participation. Furthermore, it is also helpful to have a qualitative understanding of the experience and perspective of decision makers who have mixed or negative experiences so that they can be viewed from different perspectives. Lastly, find more studies and explore other MCDM methods. For instance, methods like TOPSIS will also be beneficial, especially for further research.